very, very honored and pleased to introduce our first speaker this afternoon, which is Angeliki Kerasidou. And she is an associate professor at the Ethox Centre at Oxford and the research fellow at the Wellcome Centre for Ethics and Humanities, University of Oxford, also Fellow of Reuben College, where she leads the Ethics and Values team. And she's done enormous amounts of research and is still doing a lot of research, but including the ethics of AI and empathy and compassion at the individual systemic level, and leading an international collaboration exploring how to build empathetic healthcare systems. So I'll pass on to you, Angeliki. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today and talk to you. I'm not going to talk about empathy today. I'm going to talk about another work that I've been doing quite a lot on in relation to AI ethics. This is trust. And particularly today, I'm going to talk more about kind of epistemic trust or epistemic ways. And I'll try to explore this question of who is the expert in the room. So I'll talk about epistemic authority and experts more, and how it kind of relates to this kind of issue of trust and expertise. So I'll start with this question. So why do we trust our doctors? Why do we trust doctors? So one way maybe to answer this question is we trust them because they are experts in the field. And what do we mean by experts in the field? We mean that probably they kind of have some kind of epistemic authority in some way. And a common understanding of epistemic authority is someone with superior knowledge to that of another with respect to a specific domain. And as Zagzebski, who writes a lot in this area and kind of single-handedly almost kind of revived these discussions around epistemic authority, suggests that once we accept someone as an epistemic authority, then we need to accept their testimony as being true, and that in a way that it commits us to change our beliefs and our actions and tailor them according to this new truth that we have acquired. So like, if you tell me something and I accept you as being an epistemic authority, then I take this as being true, and then I need to act. Like if I make a decision, I take this as account, and that is the truth base on which I base my decision. And that would be the rational thing to do. It will be irrational to discount the utterance, like the truth that comes from someone who you have reasons to believe as being an epistemic authority. Right. This is like almost like the joke that, that someone goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, I think I'm dying from this horrible disease. I heard here and here and here and here and here and here. I think I have something seriously wrong with me." And the doctor, after examining them, says, "Well, no, you just have a broken finger." So this person now needs to accept that they're not dying from some horrible disease. The only thing that is wrong with them is a broken finger. And like they can fix the finger and then everything is going to be fine. So if they will go about thinking that they have some kind of horrible disease that affects their whole body, that will be the wrong and the rational thing to do. So it is this kind of idea in some way that like doctor knows best. So, we accept them as having that authority. Okay, so what does this confidence that doctor knows best comes from? So maybe we believe that doctors know best, maybe because we know our doctor and before, we know that she always tells us the truth, or because the last time I went, she was able to deal with our problem. So, we have this experiential thing that, every time we go, so we build that experience of trust that starts building around that. But I would like to suggest that maybe, and perhaps most importantly, we trust our doctors because they've gone to medical school, because they've been trained in a particular way, someone checked that they know, like they learned what they were supposed to have learned. And because also, what we now call doctors use evidence to treat us. So like their knowledge is evidence-based. And what is kind of this evidence-based knowledge, or where does medical knowledge come from? Comes from like, we go out, we collect data empirically collected data that we analyze statistically. And this statistical analysis help us develop probabilities. And the better, the more comprehensive the data and the information we have, the closer our probabilities are to reality or to the truth. I mean, they never kind of match, but the more we know, the more data we have, the closer it comes to that. And this is like, your Cochrane reports kind of in some way rely on those things as well. So if medical knowledge, this is the basis of the doctor's epistemic authority, is about getting our probabilistic calculations as close to reality as possible, then it seems that AI can have an advantage to that over human doctors. So AI models can be trained on large data sets and can process a lot more information much faster. They can have access to real-time data. They can update their outputs, like as machine learning models, foundational models, through methods of machine learning and so on. So AI can also utilize a lot more data to support clinical decision-making, leading to a new era. So that's the theory of a deeper evidence-based medicine, which is like that picture on the other side, that a lot more information can actually support what we now call evidence-based medicine. Also, studies have demonstrated how AI models can be as accurate or even more accurate than doctors in certain diagnostic tasks, for example, and other type of tasks. And the anticipation generally is that AI models will get even better. So some studies have demonstrated that doctors who rely on AI would improve their accuracy. But what happens is a lot of the time doctors do not rely on AI and dismiss AI recommendations. So if that will be true, so that would suggest, so if we think that there's certain tasks that AI tools can do better than humans, then that suggests that perhaps it is AI aversion rather than AI deference that might be problematic here. So AI deference has been criticized mainly in the literature and problematized with respect to the issues of accountability. So like if we defer to the AI, who holds the bucket in the end of the day, if something goes wrong. But if AI tools can produce much more accurate or truthful medical knowledge, then we might have good epistemic reasons to want to promote algorithmic deference. So we will want doctors to rely on AI tools for certain types of tasks, right? So furthermore, and I think people have discussed that, or I think we discussed it also in our group discussions, AI tools do not get tired, do not get hungry, do not get burnout, all sorts of them, do not get upset, kind of emotionally upset. So all those kind of things. So meaning that, that we can also eliminate various kind of errors that are product of our own kind of biology, like human biology. So, it seems to be like a win-win situation that, we have here. So it seems to me that there is this kind of a pretty good argument, like we can build to suggest that perhaps we should stop trusting doctors in some way and start relying more on AI tools. And we could leave it to this. And I think that this view it's often implied in the studies that report that this epistemic prowess of AI tools over human doctors. And however, I would like to suggest that it's based on a kind of a narrow understanding of what medicine is. As others have pointed out, it can lead to a new kind of paternalism, where one epistemic expert, the doctor, will be replaced by another epistemic expert, the AI. So we will go from the doctor knows best to AI knows best kind of scenario. However, I believe, and I would like to suggest that there are good reasons to reject AI paternalism, the same way that in the past we've rejected doctor paternalism. So there's been a lot of kind of move away from that model. So it seems a bit bizarre that we will go back to that same model. So I'd like to make some propositions for why we can reject AI paternalism the same way that we rejected doctor paternalism previously. So I'd like to propose that medicine is not just a exact science, but it's more of a social and relational enterprise. And it's not just a kind of scientific enterprise. And the type of medicine that uses data guidelines, I'm quoting from Knappen here, based on population averages to treat patients, will end up ignoring the situated expertise of physicians, but also the personal values and individual circumstances of patients. And I think that is true if we start kind of moving to that kind of AI paternalistic model, or we think that medicine is all about some kind of hard truths that can be extrapolated somehow from very reliable data. So let me go back to the question that I started with. So why do we trust doctors? And I would like to kind of modify slightly my original answer here. So we trust our doctors not only because they know more about medicine or human biology or human physiology or whatever else that this kind of scientific field where this knowledge comes from than us, but because they also have goodwill. I mean, I've argued in other papers like this idea that trust is between kind of a reasonable belief in that the trustees' skill, competence, knowledge, but also in their goodwill. And the way that I understand goodwill in this context is that the doctor's commitment to care for their patients in the best of their abilities. So I'm not necessarily assuming that they have some, you know them and they're your best friend, but doctors have a strong commitment to always act at the best interest of their patients, and that they will do that at the best of their abilities. So I suggest that in this relational understanding of medicine, the patient is there not as a silent observer, an obedient follower of a doctor's instructions, but a partner in the therapeutic relationship. The patient brings into the room their individual experience of the condition of disease. They are the embodied reality of that condition and or illness rather than a statistical representation of it. And also they bring their own personal history, their values, their preferences, their commitments, and so on. So the doctor is required to engage with all these aspects of the patient and treat the person as we normally say, and not just the disease. And the patient is there to engage with the doctor and decide with the doctor's expert input and guidance what is the best course of actions for them. And I was reminded of that when Anna this morning was talking about like this kind of responsiveness to care delivery as well. So we have certain expectations from the patient as well. The patient has like this kind of caregiving model has expectations from both sides. So viewing medicine as a social and relational enterprise invites us to rethink the notion of epistemic expertise in medicine and kind of what we call like medical expertise. So it might be different, I'd like to suggest. So the doctor is considered an expert in the room, I would say, not because she is the source of true beliefs, but rather the source of understanding. And I'm following Jaeger and Crouse here. So in other words, instead of telling us with some authority what we ought to believe and how we ought to behave, what the doctor does is telling us what is a good and not a good enough or a good reason or not good reason to believe something, and what is the state of evidence regarding a specific issue or question, and how this all relate to our specific circumstances. Medical questions are not strictly speaking domain-specific questions in the way that a question about what is the capital of Greece is a domain-specific question to geography, and there is an expert and they can tell me what that capital is, and I'll accept that as being true. Or, you know, like the properties of atoms are a domain-specific question to physics, and if there is a physics expert here, I will not question them, and I will accept whatever they were to say. But they are kind of relational questions, and their answers depend on many factors, many of which have nothing to do with a specific scientific domain of human biology and human physiology sometimes, but they're more about sociocultural norms, personal preferences, practical issues, constraints that the patients can bring in, their experience, so on and so forth. So although a doctor cannot always answer all these questions for us, especially questions like, will this therapy be better for me, all things considered? Will I be happier or better able to meet my other duties and obligations if I do A or if I do B? Live a good life in this way, or a life that is more meaningful to me? These are not questions that the doctor can like just sit there and tell us with some authority, this is the answer to your question. They can nevertheless help us make sense of this all and tell us how we should reason about it when we're trying to make our a decision as a patient. So as an epistemic authority in medicine is someone who is able to guide us in understanding what counts as good evidence or reason for our belief or action, rather than someone who is there to tell us what we ought to believe or how we ought to act. So I would like to suggest maybe the question is not who knows best, but who can care for me best. Right. So where does this leave us in relation to the issue we've identified later regarding our epistemic reasons to defer to AI for our medical decisions? So AI tools might be able to do things like process more data faster, more accurately than humans, but they cannot do the explaining, the evaluating, the engaging that is required by a medical expert in order to help patients make sense of their own situation and make the right decisions for themselves. This does not, however, mean that AI tools are useless. I will say that we might have strong epistemic reasons to incorporate reliable, not trustworthy, reliable AI tools into the medical decision-making. In the end of the day, AI tools could give doctors access to some important epistemic goods. So information that is useful and important that we should take into account when they're treating patients or they're making some kind of decisions. But accepting this, that some epistemic goods can come from AI, does not commit us to the view that we ought to consider AI tools as the epistemic authority in the room, whose recommendations doctor and patients now should blindly follow. So we can still enjoy the benefits of AI whilst resisting this kind of new age paternalism. So I would say that moving forward, it would be much more beneficial to think of the future of medicine as one not of a confrontation between AI and humans, but one of collaboration. So as long as we continue to consider medicine not just a domain-specific scientific endeavor, but also as a social and relational enterprise, then the epistemic authority, I suggest, should and hopefully will remain with the doctors. And it will still be the doctor who we will trust in the end of the day to treat us with skill, but also goodwill.